Okay. We are having, as you could see, we had a few initial technical problems in setting this up. This is the first time we are starting up our Greenfoot live event. We have no real experience with the software at the moment, so it was a bit tricky. Thank you for waiting until we had our problems sorted out, and now I think we're ready to start.
Yeah.
Okay, so I hope you can hear us. If not, then tell us in the chat window. We will keep an eye on the chat as we go along, so if there are any problems, if you shout at us in the chat window, then we should probably notice. But otherwise, we start now. So let's maybe start by saying who we are. I'm Michael Kölling. I am one of the developers and the team lead on the Greenfoot project.
Okay, I'm Neil Brown, so I work for Michael on the Greenfoot project. I do a lot of the development of Greenfoot itself.
Yeah, Neil is in fact doing a very large part of the implementation, whereas I don't really write that much code anymore. I used to write code in Greenfoot some time ago, and I get less and less time to actually write code myself. So
now's our opportunity.
Yes, maybe I can write some code in Greenfoot today. So welcome to the first of the Greenfoot live events. We hope that this will become a regular series over time. Our current intention is to run a session like this every 2 weeks, always on a Monday. We think it's best to pick a regular time. Those of you where the time is no good then miss out maybe regularly, unfortunately, but for those of you who are here, at least maybe you can get used to what the time is.
Although we're hoping to have a recording available as well afterwards, so that people can watch. But being here live allows you to sort of pose questions and leave comments for it.
Yeah, so if that YouTube technology works, should record it and be available later.
Assuming we've got it right.
We'll see. Maybe we need a few episodes to get the hang of how to do this. The idea is that we talk in these sessions about Greenfoot, both about some programming aspects, some technical aspects, a bit about how to solve certain problems within Greenfoot when you want to program something. We also want to talk about the pedagogy of Greenfoot a bit, that is how to teach with Greenfoot. So we are particularly interested to talk to you out there who are teachers of Greenfoot, although of course if you are not a teacher, you're very welcome to join in as well. And maybe we'll talk occasionally about what we're working on at the moment and what we think we might do with Greenfoot in future.
That's good.
We can make that a little bit interactive. So our idea is that we prepare a little bit of content, sort of one topic maybe to talk about that came up over the last few weeks that people have told us where they have questions about. But we also would like to take questions from you. So we have a second screen here where Neil can keep an eye on the chat window. So if you type in questions in the chat window, I think we can maybe pick up
we'll try and
a couple of those.
An opportunity to have a look at them.
That's the idea. So it's a chance for you to feedback some questions, either some general questions you may have already before coming here that you have in mind, or then while we show you things, some questions that you have specifically to whatever we happen to be doing at the moment.
Yep.
Okay, so maybe we'll start with just showing you the one topic we already have in mind where we know we have some questions, because it's a question that came up repeatedly over the last few months already now, actually quite a long time. It's a sort of, should be, if we had a frequently asked questions page.
Most frequently asked question.
It would probably be top of the list. And that is how to put text on the screen in a Greenfoot.
Yeah, and particularly how to do a scoreboard.
Yes, the scoreboard, when you make it, that's probably the most common context in which it comes up, that people want to get some text on the screen. One reason to talk about it is that it actually has changed. It's now already actually some years ago. When did we add this? 2 years ago or so?
Yeah, 2 or 3 years ago. People have been asking about it a lot, and how do we put text on the screen, and the answer we had for them was a bit too difficult. So we changed things in Greenfoot. We've actually made it a bit easier now, but not everybody knows about it, so we thought it would make a good topic for our sort of first tip. showing you how to do things in Greenfoot.
Yeah. And so there was some early teaching material that we had where you actually had to create a separate object in Greenfoot to get text. But let me just switch over to my screen here. So if things go well, you should now not see us talking anymore, but see my screen here. And I have a little program here, which is an asteroids game, which I've just started up. So if I run this, I can now fly around with my rocket ship. Okay,
we might want to mute the sound to protect.
Oh, that's true. We're getting probably sound feedback. Okay, I will.
We probably just blew your ears off on the live stream there.
I will just switch my sound off here. Okay, back to our program. So this is my little asteroids game where I can already fly around with my rocket, but at the moment I'm not getting a score.
Yep.
So what we can do now maybe is that we work on putting the score on the screen.
Okay, let's go for it.
So where do we start? Shall we start first putting some text on screen, just some static text?
Okay, yeah, we'll show the basics.
Okay, I will open the class here that's called space. That is the world class. So the subclass of our world class that serves as the particular world for this asteroids example. And you see there's some initialization here, and there are already a few methods here to initialize the scenario. So now maybe we can add a method here that we already call show score. So in the initial version we might not show the score, but just a static text. But so if I oops, I can't type. If I add a method like this, and then I just put initially some static text on the screen.
Yep.
So we are in the world class here. So the most important thing to know is a method in the world class, in the word superclass, this one here. It comes from the world class in Greenfoot. That is show text.
Yep. So it's show text. It's just got 3 parameters. It's very simple.
Yeah. So I can also, as a side remark for those who you don't know, if you start typing the method name and control space gives you the code completion here. There you see is show text.
Yep. And so that already gives you the hint for the 3 parameters there. So the first one is just the text you actually want to show on the screen. So for the moment we're just putting some placeholder text in there. Okay, so Michael has given himself a large score there. And then you just need the X and the Y position. So they're the same as any other X and Y position in Greenfoot. It's pixels on the screen, and 0, 0 is in the top left. So we're going to put ours in the top left, I guess.
I can first see what happens if I actually use 0, 0, just to show you. It's probably not what we want to do at the end, but it shows what happens if you put it really in the top left corner.
Yep.
So we have a show score method here, and here we are in the constructor. If at the end of the constructor we call it, we can see what happens.
Okay, let's give it a go.
So
okay, so what's happened there is 0, 0 is displaying it, although you can barely see it in the top, and basically the position you give is the center of the text that's being shown, so hence it's currently kind of partly off the screen. So it's usually a matter of trial and error to get the right position. We certainly need to come right a bit and down a bit. So
if we put it to 150 in X, and then that's sort of the middle of the text. Of course, it's much wider than high, so we need to move it more toward on the X coordinate. Moving it 20 down is probably enough. And if we go back here, let's see where it ends up now.
Yeah, pretty good, but need to go left a bit.
Okay, maybe 100 is enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so that's simple as that to get some text on the screen in Greenfoot these days. You just need to call the show text method with the text that you want, and then the X and the Y position. So that's a pretty good start to get the text on the screen, but what we want to do today is wire it up into a score display. So for that we're actually going to need to start keeping score, I guess.
Yes, so to keep a score, well, the first question would always be, which class do you do that in?
Yeah.
And since the score in your game is sort of a global attributes of the whole game rather than of any of the particular actors, so I would put it in the world class, because that's sort of where all the global things happen. So we keep the score here. I start by making a variable for it.
Okay.
Obviously for the score it's an integer variable, is very straightforward decision. Now there's a style question here. We want to initialize the score to 0, of course.
Yep.
So there are two questions. One is, where do you initialize it? Because in Java you have two possibilities. You can initialize it here at the top where you define the variable, so I could initialize it here. Or I could initialize it in the constructor. Or I could not initialize it at all, relying on the fact that I know for instance variables, if I don't initialize it, it gets initialized to 0 anyway.
Yeah, which is true.
Which one would you choose?
I think the last one's a bit lazy. You, although it's true that you get 0 by default, you're never quite sure if the programmer accidentally forgot to initialize it, or if they're using this clever trick. So it's always a bit better to be explicit. So I think we do want to initialize it to 0. I'm pretty easy on whether we initialize it in the constructor or the variable itself. I think it depends on, if it depends on the constructor parameter, it's good to initialize it in the constructor. In fact, you have to at that point.
Yeah.
If it doesn't depend on the constructor parameter, it kind of emphasizes that point to actually initialize it up there where the variable's declared, because you know it's not going to be affected.
Yeah, I typically do things the same. I probably agree with your first point. Just leaving it off, relying on the default initialization, I think I actually would be happier if Java didn't even allow it, because it doesn't document whether it's an initial, sort of an intentional decision to initialize it or whether you've just forgotten it. Because you have to remember the program text. It's not only for writing your program, it's also for other people to read your program. And initializing it explicitly just expresses better what you want to do. Yes, and whereas up here or in the constructor, you could argue that you want to have all initializations together in one place, so you could do it in the constructor, because some initializations, as you say, you can only do in the constructor if they rely on a parameter.
Yeah.
But then again, I don't feel very strongly about it. It's one of those cases where you have a choice. It's redundancy in the language. It allows you to do it this way and that way. Redundancy is always nice for experts because it gives you flexibility. For teaching, it's annoying sometimes because students don't have a good feeling for which way they should be doing it.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just a bit of a coin toss. We're split here as to which one exactly is the best option.
Yeah. My general rule, if you have multiple options how to do things, is always think about which one is more readable, which one is easier to understand when some outsider reads your program. That's always my guiding thought. Except in this case, it is still pretty even either way. So that it's still okay. Maybe I'll leave it as I have it here. I'll leave the initialization of my score up here, and then I can change it here. Instead of showing 1 million points the whole time, I can just attach my score variable here with a string concatenation, and if I do that now, I can see I've got 0 points.
Okay, and now because the string is shortened, it's moved across a bit. It's one of the drawbacks of us having decided to center the string. Makes it a tiny bit awkward when you've got something like this where the string changes length. But, well, too late now, isn't it?
Yeah. We will see. Maybe at the end we can talk about how you can get a bit more fine-grained control. If you really care sort of in detail about sort of the exact pixel value where it is, or about the exact font size or color, so then you have to do other things.
Yeah.
So this
is the quick and easy
Yes,
version.
the show text method is sort of the quick and easy, makes it very easy to get something on screen, but you don't get as fine-grained control of what it looks like. Okay, so we can show some text. We can show some text that includes a variable here. Now we need to keep score somehow.
Yeah.
We probably, what do we want to give us points for? So
it's asteroids, so we've got to get points for shooting asteroids, I would imagine.
yeah, so if I go fly around here and I shoot, I can either give myself points every time I hit an asteroid or every time the asteroid breaks up. Maybe hitting is too easy. Maybe let's say every time the asteroid breaks into two pieces, we want to.
Yep. So if
points.
we take a look at the asteroid source code, we can see if we can find the points where the asteroids break up.
Yeah. So we have reasonable method names here, so it's.
One of the advantages of sensible method names, there's a break-up method for when the asteroids break up. So
there's a hit method when the asteroid gets hit, and it loses stability, and when it gets below 0, then it breaks up. Here's the break-up method where it actually breaks. So here, when we're breaking up, so if the stability is less than 0, it breaks, and there we can give ourselves some points.
Okay. So if we're keeping score in the world, then we're over here in asteroid, and one of the things that people have to get to grips with when they're learning Greenfoot is understanding, if you're in one actor, how to get to sort of the other object, whether it's another actor or the world. Now the world is easier, which is why it's a nice place to keep score, because we have the get world method.
Yeah, so we are at the moment we're writing code for
the asteroid.
An asteroid, and we want to keeping score in the world, so we need to talk to the world. And every actor has the get world method, which gives us the world.
Yeah.
And then we want to now
call we don't even have that method yet.
We don't have an add score method. We have here. If we go back to the space method, we have a show score. Maybe we should change that to an add score, or maybe we need both. Do we need show score and an add score?
I think add score should always update the score on the screen. So I think
then we don't need both. Then we need
only change this one to add score.
Then we make this an add score and give it a parameter.
Yep.
How many points we are getting. I also need to change it here. I need to cheat a little bit here, because I want to show the initial 0-point score. So if I just add 0 at the beginning, then it should force the initial display before I get any points.
So there's two ways we could have done this here. We could either sort of copy that show text line that we've got there into the constructor, so it shows from the beginning, and then also keep a copy in the add score, or we just have one in the add score, but we slightly cheekily call the add score method from the constructor in order to show it the first time.
So that's actually sort of a slight trick.
Yeah.
Every time you do a trick, we could say we add a comment. Maybe if something is a little bit, then oops, that was just a slip of my finger here. We can, if something isn't entirely clear why you're doing it, you might want to make.
The advantage for us here of keeping a single show text call rather than two is if we reposition it in a minute to get the position better, we only have to update it once rather than changing the position in multiple places. So that's kind of helpful. There's always ways around it. There's always different ways to do things, but let's just press ahead with what we've got here.
Okay, so we add our score to we add the new points to the score, and then we display it.
Okay, so we've got our add score method. Now we need to go back to the asteroid and actually call the method.
Yep, so here, where were we? Here.
Yep.
So if I now go there and use my code completion and do an add
score,
it hasn't
we're not
updated.
Going to find it. No, there's a reason for this. So when you call get world, what you get back is an object of world. So if we just want to show maybe the class diagram for a second. So space is a subclass of world, but Greenfoot allows you to have many worlds. So when asteroid calls get world, we don't know ahead of time whether the world is going to be of type space or whether it might be a second type that we sort of introduce into Greenfoot. So we always get back world, but world doesn't know anything about score.
Yes, what you get here from get world, so type world, it's as if we are opening up this one here, the original world class, and see what's here. And there is no add score method here. You're getting offered only the original world methods.
Yeah.
So what we need is actually, our add score method is not in world, it's in space. So what we need is we need something of type space rather than something of type world. Although confusingly, it is actually the right object, but the type annotation is wrong.
So we have to sort of assert, if you like, that we know it's of type space. And there's two ways to do this. An old way in Greenfoot was always that you use something called a cast. So you cast the result of get.
Yes, in fact, in early versions of Greenfoot, you had to do it that way, isn't it? Because the second way that I guess you will talk about in a moment was also added later on.
So it's one of our other new features. So everyone, when they called get world, they almost always had to cast it. So it was getting a little bit sort of annoying for everybody to have to cast it. So we added a new method, which is called get world of type.
Actually, I can just use code completion here and it will tell me. It's called get world of type. Yeah.
So with get world of type, you just basically say, I know it's going to be the space class. So here you just call space.class. And that then gives us back something of type space. So now...
So if I now do code completion, I should
see the add
score.
Yep.
There we go.
How many points do we want?
Okay, for breaking up an asteroid...
10. 10 is the traditional amount of points to add in
we get 10 points.
in a game. 10 is better than 1.
Yeah. You can always add a few zeros. More fun playing if you get more points.
Yeah, so let's maybe give it a try. See.
Okay.
There we go. Score shows initially.
By the way, we should also maybe say, for those who haven't used a recent version of Greenfoot, it now compiles automatically. You see, in earlier versions, those of you who are still using an old version, there might be a compile button down here, which isn't there anymore. So what just happened here, it compiles actually every time now when you bring the main window into focus. So when I clicked on that window, that's when the compile took place, and if all is well, if I don't have a syntax error, it all happens. Otherwise, the other possibility would have seen that you see something that gets red striped here, which means there's an error or something.
Yeah.
Okay, but we have already got our compilation going there just by focusing the window. I can try it out.
Now we need to shoot some asteroids. Oh no.
I'm not very good at playing this, and it's again, okay.
Oh, we've got an exception. How exciting.
So, the asteroid just did break, and the moment the asteroid broke, we got this happening here. Null pointer exception. And we can actually, so when you get an exception, usually a programming mistake, so we probably have an error somewhere, what you do then here, this shows you the call stack. What you usually do is you get to the top method here, because it's actually called in reverse order from starting from the bottom. This method was called, which called this one, which called this one, and so on. They call each other from the bottom to the top. So this is the last method that was called. And if you click on it, there's a link. It will go to the source code to exactly to the point where you got the origin of your exception. So we have a null pointer exception somewhere in this line. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so this is actually one of our other most frequently asked questions, which is, why do I get a null pointer exception out of get world? So, we often have code in the actors that want to call get world so that they can do things, but just occasionally there's a situation that occurs where get world returns null. And that's when the actor is no longer in the world. And so what we're getting here is a problem that, sorry, I'm pointing at the screen, you can't see that. So the breakup method gets called, and if we look at the code for the breakup method, at the very bottom you'll see that actually either of the branches you go into, we're removing ourselves from the world when we get broken up. And so as soon as you call getWorld.removeObject this, we're removing ourselves. Any future calls to getWorld will return null, and same with getWorld of type. So the problem is we're adding the score too late. We've already left the world at that point. So we need to change our methods.
Yeah.
And in fact, we actually had a comment there with somebody saying, why don't you put the add score method inside the breakup method? And so perhaps that's the best way to fix it.
That's a very good idea. I think that's a nicer way. So the problem here is our get world call, that now that's what fails because we're not in the world. So one reaction might be just ignoring that comment for a while, just to move that up a line, move that here, counting the score first before we're removing ourselves from the world.
Yeah.
That would work, I think, unless I'm overlooking something else. But the comment actually is actually a nicer way to do it, because if you do it this way, there is now a dependency between those two lines, where the dependency is you must call this line before this line.
Yeah.
And there's nothing really in the source code to indicate that. So some maintenance programmer later might reorder them again and reintroduce the error. By putting that call into the breakup method, you have much more control over what the breakup does.
Before that if statement.
So we could put it here, yeah.
And we could in fact write a comment as well, just on that, to say must call this before removing ourselves from the world or something.
Oops.
Because although we know it now, we might well forget it in future by the time we come back. So it's not always about what will another programmer think of your code, it's what will you think of the code when you come back to it in a few weeks or a few months and you've completely forgotten how it works, and you curse your past self. So let's help ourselves out in future, and we'll put a comment in now.
Okay, so we can here close our exception window, try it out again.
Okay, so let's shoot some asteroids.
Where are we? Oh, it's coming.
10 points.
I've got an excuse here for playing so badly because of the video streaming. There's actually a little bit of lag in my interaction. I got 40 points though. 40 points before being destroyed.
And the really positive thing is that our code works. So
Now I want a high score table.
We'll have to come back to that one in a future episode.
Okay.
So one thing just to point out about the show text method that's not perhaps immediately apparent. So we're calling show text repeatedly to put the text up in that particular position in the top left. And so you might perhaps have expected that it would actually just overwrite on the screen, so to overlay the text one on top of the other, and therefore you end up with a garbled mess because you draw score 10 on top of score 0 and then you draw score 20 on top of that. The show text method actually has the behavior that if you pass the same position, so exactly the same X and Y position, we remove the other text rather than trying to do sort of overdraw. So as long as you keep that position fixed, the text would just keep updating, because we knew we wanted to do things like this.
Yeah, essentially you can have
score.
You can have one string per screen pixel.
Yeah, so it just makes it sort of convenient for you. And just to answer one question I saw in the comments there, they asked whether it was pixels or cells.
Yes, good question.
X and Y position. So often in Greenfoot we do scenarios where we have this notion of a sort of a cell, and often we do scenarios where one pixel is one cell, and at that point it doesn't matter. But I'm pretty sure that the show text method there is done in cells. So if you do have cells that are bigger than one pixel,
I think just about everything you do with coordinates in Greenfoot is always in cells.
Yeah.
So sometimes we tend to ignore it because we have so many examples where the cell size is one pixel. But it is in cells, actually. That's a very good point. So if you have a scenario where you have larger cells, then it would be relevant.
Actually, we can give it a very quick test. If you go to the space constructor,
let me just put the
flip that back on. So in the space constructor, this super line here that says it's 600 by 400 cells, and each cell is 1 pixel. So if we just change that to 2 even, the score should move position when we go back here. That's how we'll know that it's different. So the window got larger, and you can see the score moved because each cell is now 2 pixels. So that just confirms it. So if we just set that back, we'll go back. So common rule of thumb really, if you're not totally sure what a method is going to do or what its behavior is, just try it out, see what happens, and sort of, work out what's going on. Or you could read the documentation. It's fun to experiment.
Okay, so that was... Oh, actually, I clicked on the wrong thing. I meant to switch the camera on, not the display. Our goal for these Greenfoot Live events was to talk for not too long, because that will always also be available as a recording later on, and we don't want to have 2-hour videos. So I think we probably aim at coming to an end sometime soon. So today we answered at least one very frequently asked question. It's about the text on screen. What we haven't said so far is what you want to do if you want to have larger text or a different color or different font.
Yeah, well, that could be our topic for next time.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We have already then one idea at least lined up to talk about in the future. So that I think we leave it at that for the programming bit for today. Do we have any other related questions before we end for today?
I just covered the couple of questions that we had there. But if you have any sort of topics or questions that you particularly want us to cover, you can always, I think this should be available as a recording if we set things up right, as a YouTube video afterwards, so you can always put some comments on there as to what you're interested in future, or turn up next time and send us some comments live, and we can go through them.
Yeah, so also, as Neil said, topics for future discussion, we'd probably be quite happy to hear it. We have a few ideas at the moment, but to keep it going into the future, we will have to have ideas for additional topics at some point. So if you have something that you would like us to talk about, tell us. And then hopefully we see many of you again in a couple of weeks.
Yep.
And maybe we even get the technology starting from the beginning.
Yes. We'll learn.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
right.
Thank you for listening,
Yep.
and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Yep.
And now I have to figure out how to switch off the streaming.
That button right there.
Bye-bye.